Welcome, everybody, to the Satisfactionist Podcast. I am your host, Professor Ben. Today, we are doing our first panel discussion, and we are doing a panel discussion around the topic of media, but specifically movies. And so joining me this week are two, I'm going to call them legendary extras in movies. We have Mr. Matt or Matthew A. Gilbert, so that we don't get him confused with the Hollywood critic, and also Shah Qhan. Gentlemen, how are you?
Very good. How are you doing?
Fantastic.
Doing great. Nice to be here with both of you.
Let's start with the work as extras. Let's take a sidestep in criticism and move into that. So I looked for you guys. I don't.
You know, this is what like I want to the thing is, they had like almost, I think, Matt could correct me on that, I think 1,600 extras, you know. And this is where I admire Hollywood quite a lot, you know, and I see, you know, so they casted 1,600 extras. They had like thousands of costumes to try on each extra different costume, and you know, it's just a lot of work, you know.
Yeah, but outside of all those costumes, all I saw were like human-looking people.
Exactly. So what happened eventually in the movie? It ended up like hardly 100 extras, really. If I really count, because we were on the set for 2 days and Matt was there for 3 days, and for us, it was, at least for me, it was a great experience. I tell you why. For the first time, I felt how exactly it would be if we were actually living among aliens, you know. So we were on a set, and these are like almost like 1,500 extras around us. Somebody's dressed up like an alien, somebody's like that, and then there was a mess hall. There was a food area where everybody sits down and eat. So you had these tables, and on the table there were like Starfleet people sitting on one table. On the other table there was a couple of aliens sitting. On the other table, us sitting. And so it's like a huge, you know, if you look at that scene, it's like, wow, there are like all these different people sitting at one place. I mean, different aliens sitting at one place and eating food together, you know. It was just really, really like different. And we were not allowed to take our phone or any kind of camera or anything to take picture. So obviously nobody was texting, nobody was on Twitter, nobody was on Facebook, and everybody was just right there, you know. And out of that waiting area where all the aliens and all of us would be there, and out of the waiting area, a group of people would be called on. They would get in a line and they would follow the producer, and then they would go in a scene, they would work there and come back. And, you know, once they come back, it was pretty much like a ship is coming to take them for some mission, and then ships drop them back into this area. So this, for me, that experience was way more. And, you know, Matt was one of the aliens with 4 hands, you know, so you can ask him, like, what was he doing with that?
Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar experience to Shaw. I was actually only on the one set for the very last day of shooting, so for me it was even a more condensed kind of an experience. But yeah, there was this kind of strange surrealness to it, in that this big waiting room was a big I don't know what it typically is, but where I filmed, at least where I met Shaw, was at the Maidan race course here in Dubai. And so they had this big area with lots of these circular tables, and yeah, like Shaw said, I felt like, you know, I think I even joked during it, I felt like it was some weird combination of Amish and alien, because we're all supposedly sort of, you know, living or, you know, placed into this futuristic world, yet none of us have cell phones, none of us are connected to the world, and it felt very retro, like, oh my gosh, we actually have to talk to people, like,
very
selfie, pre-cell phone, like, what is this craziness? And I will say the one thing that I found interesting as well was people tended to naturally segregate themselves. And just as Shaw was explaining, all of the same type of characters often seemed to be sitting next to each other. Now, there was no requirement to do so. They didn't tell you where to sit. It was probably just out of practicality. You know, people were being pulled in.
So Starfleet people were in one area.
So there was a table. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
even rank-wise, Therefore, this is exactly, you hit the nail. So
Yeah.
they had different ranks in the Starfleet commandership, right? So the Starfleet commanders are sitting on one table, that's the officers table, and the other ones are sitting like the engineering department was in one place because they had a red color and the other. So we were like, guys, did you know each other? You're like, no, but we are from engineering department.
Oh
Like,
my God. So even though your rank holds no official status outside of this room,
yeah.
it's like you couldn't sit at the officers' table. No, not that they wouldn't
And
allow
then and
you,
then
but
this is Dubai. They were shooting in Dubai, so everybody from different country. So on one table you're seeing this 10 people from Starfleet, like officers, and all these officers are from 10 different countries. But all of them are sitting together like they know each other for like years.
that is
And they're like
hilarious.
because they're wearing one uniform. That was a strange kind of experiment.
Yeah, it was, and it felt very Starfleet-ish because there was such a literal diversity of people. I mean, outside of the people who were really made up to look alien. And the funny thing about my costume, so I've tried to explain my costume to people, and for lack of a better word, the way that I sort of remember my costume, it kind of felt a little bit like a Han Solo kind of an outfit. Like I had like ski pants on, kind of a thing, and boots, and it was all dark blue in color. And then the top part of me was this sort of very like heavy kind of knit sweater kind of a thing. But I almost felt like I had this bounty hunter vibe to me. But I had 4 arms. 2 of them were literally just like, those like long floaty things they put in pools, those foam things,
Yeah.
those long. I'm pretty sure that was basically just what was in my extra 2 arms. They didn't move. They weren't anything. They were kind of pointless, but what I tried to do was whenever I was on set, I tried to have them give me a prop that I could either put into one of the fake hands, or I tried to at least make it look like they were useful. But the interesting thing with my outfit is technically I was an alien, but the way that my costume was supposed to work, it kind of had this like turtleneck kind of a top that you were supposed to button up, and it would cover my face and my whole head. So I would look like I had no head or something like that. But you didn't have to button it up, and so when we initially did digital capture and green screen work, they had me button it up. And I was doing green screen work, and I literally had about a teeny little sliver that I could see through. And I was trying to walk, and somehow I didn't walk into anybody or anything. But when we actually did the filming on the set, they paired me with another guy in the same costume, and they had us walking in tandem, or one in front, one behind, and we were always kind of together. And for whatever reason, when he showed up on the set, they didn't button up his top, and I thought, well, if he's not gonna, it'll increase my odds of at least seeing my face on camera. Plus, it would have been incredibly hot, and we would have been walking into people. So, um, so I was an alien in some respect, but I really didn't have an alien head or anything. I wasn't in one of the very ornate outfits, although I initially was supposed to be in a very sort of alien-esque looking outfit with a kind of a like a created head that I actually did see that character in one of the shots. So
Yeah,
I guess
And,
I was
and
in the
it was a
movie
very
by
interesting.
adjacency.
We had a whole conversation between me and Matt that if we really had 4 hands, what could be what would be the use of all these hands?
Yeah.
How could we use each hand for many different things? So it was very interesting to see all that.
well, you'd make a great bellhop, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And so this whole, I mean, beside the movie, on the set, obviously it's a huge set. I just personally think that whatever I saw, technically, 80% of the things we shot there were not even in the movie. It's just very precise points during the 18-hour of shoot. It was an 18-hour stay for us. And during the 18 hours of the shoot, whatever I have seen, it was hardly 3 minutes of those 18 hours that were actually incorporated in the movie. So you could really see like how far Hollywood goes to make a movie. That's why budgets are so big. You spend 18 hours to have 3 minutes of a movie. You had like 1,500 extras casted, which means you had like almost 2,500 costumes to try on, and you did the whole thing for one day. And during that whole casting time, and when the shoot happened, you hardly, I think, in total of all the extras, you hardly 100 of them are showing. Rest of them are not even, none of them were even showing the people. Some of the people I really thought that they were really great costumes, and they would definitely making the movie. Believe it or not, most of the people with the costume are not in the movie. Most of the costumes are not even there. It's just
Yeah.
actually very normal people. There are not many aliens which we saw. They're not there in the movie.
Yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
the scene. I guess you guys are where the International Space Station, or I shouldn't say
Yes.
international,
Yeah.
intergalactic space station is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yorktown. Yeah.
yeah, so you guys were in the Yorktown scene, and like I said, most of the extras that I saw were more in the Star Trek realm. We'd call them humanoid looking than
Right.
were alien looking.
Yeah, I almost entirely the extras that I saw, because there were two main sort of shots from that set, and one was an initial kind of establishing shot where, as the Enterprise is approaching, you get this kind of like hallway view, and it pans up, and then I think out through the window you see the Enterprise approaching. So that was one area. Basically, the set that we were on was kind of like the intersection of two walking areas. It was like an L,
Yeah.
basically. And so where that shot went, it went kind of to the point of the L, kind of the edge, the heel or whatever of the L.
Yeah.
Sean and I were walking somewhere in that scene, on that set.
No, no. We are exactly at that point, when in the scene when these people come back home and Sulu goes and meets his family. You remember we were right behind him.
Yeah.
We were right behind him when he's picking up his kids.
Yeah.
But then,
Basically, for
then
most
we
of that
had
scene,
I think almost 12 retakes of that shot. So I don't know which shot they picked up, but we are right there, right behind him when he picks up. But what happens after he picks up these kids? The camera keeps on rolling and follows him going.
Right.
And this is where we were coming in the shot while the camera was following. But they cut the whole of that part where he just picks up the kid, cut, it just goes to something else. So
Yeah, because I actually kind of thought that I might be in it more, because in almost, I would say, 75% of the shots that I was in, I was either walking behind, in front of, or next to. Early on, it was Captain Kirk. I was walking in front of him and behind, and there was a scene that they cut out where he was talking to that little guy from engineering,
yeah.
the little alien guy.
Yeah.
And I remember he was talking to him, and in the scene, every time I would walk by them, the little guy would sneeze, which is
Yeah.
part of the plot, actually. Right? I remember that.
Yeah.
And then the other part I remember walking by Spock and his elders. In that one scene where they give him the thing from Parallel Dimension Spock.
Yeah.
And I remember walking right past them too. And again, I don't know which take they took, but not the one I was in.
I think this is what I think. I think that whole day, the whole thing was reshot.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing was reshot back in Hollywood. What they did, they took the backdrops and everything. I think because there's a huge reshoot that happened in Star Trek, right? It's a known fact.
That's true. Yeah.
So it happened. So I think they have shot this whole part. They reshot, and all those extras were out. That's why because of the reshoots, none of the actual aliens are there. Because if you were on a set, we thought like, oh wow, there's just so many aliens. There were hardly any humanoids there. So there's so many aliens were there.
Yeah, that's true.
That's interesting. It's interesting to just be a part of things on that end. I think the process of making a movie is very interesting, fascinating. As a person who's a professional in project management, I see it as a huge, like, big puzzle of things that you're putting together in project managing. So it's neat to see the afterward. I remember when I used to dabble in music, and you hear people, you play something over and over and over, and you're trying for the right sound, the right sequence, the right, for it to come through the right way, for it to be, part of your final work, if you will. So it's
Right.
neat that you guys, got to see the process, even though you ended up on the cutting room floor, maybe.
Hey, I mean,
Yeah.
I never expected to be in that movie. I knew how this works. I was like, okay, whatever. But all I wanted is really to be a part of this process for like 2 days, like how the whole shoot is going to happen, and and this is what I really wanted to see, that how much they shoot and how much they cut. Apparently they cut the whole thing, so
Yeah, I think you're right, Shaw, because I remember in the very end, towards the very end, Shah and I were actually walking together with another woman who we met, and we were walking kind of as if we were coming off of another ship. Like
Yeah,
literally we would have been walking towards the camera when it pans up, like that's
yeah.
where we would walking. And I remember there was this bizarre looking alien creature, and it was literally I think 4 or 5 people part of the same costume. And it was
Yeah.
like there were 2 or 3 people in the front, and they were like, and there was almost like a carpet of some kind like coming off of their back, and then it connected to this much larger alien. It was all
Oh, wow.
supposed to be
Yeah,
the
you
same
remember
alien,
the huge, the biggest costumes of the
Yeah.
set. Remember? There was a
And we
huge.
thought for sure, oh, we're going to be in because we,
Oh,
we intentionally tried to be near this
I
big
just
crazy
remember now.
costume.
Exactly. They had this one. They called her probably some intergalactic queen or something, right, from another planet.
Yeah.
And it was such a big costume. It was a huge costume. I don't know, 10, 15 people were carrying it, and she had like slaves behind her who were carrying that costumes for her, which is supposed to be like her tentacles or something, right?
Yeah, I do. I remember that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she walks in from the spaceship, and then everybody's, like they receive her. She was some sort of, queen from another planet, and we were right next to her. We were like, definitely, we were in so many shots, to be honest. I mean, so many critical shots. I walked right side by side with Zoe Saldana for like almost 12 takes. I was like,
Wow.
I'm gonna be with her. So this shot, they have completely. So I think what I think is that the whole day we shot that day, they have reshot the whole thing, because none of the things that happen on the set that day are in the movie.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know I do recall seeing a couple of people in a couple of the shots, mostly when Spock was talking to Uhura. There was a couple people walking behind and in front, but they were all basically Starfleet people, like
Yeah,
humanoid Starfleet people.
but
But
we
I
didn't
did
have
see one or two
Starfleet
people
people.
who I did remember seeing on the set,
Yeah,
and uh, I think if I look closely enough, I might see some other people. I think they combined a couple of things. I don't know, but yeah, there were some very ornate, very intricate costumes. I remember a lot of the really alien-esque looking alien ones where they had these enormous like heads in between takes or every so many takes. They would stop, and then somebody would do one or two things. They would either take the head off so the poor person wearing that costume could breathe, and like a gallon of sweat would pour out of the thing. Um, and or they would a lot of the bigger costumes literally were air conditioned or they had tubing in them, and then the prop people or the costume people, both, would come up and like plug in some kind of like vacuum-esque looking thing, and I guess it would push cold air through it. Um, and so they were. I will have to say that overall, the experience, I think, kind of like Shaw was saying, I really enjoyed the experience. I anticipated if I were in a shot, I'd be blurry, or it'd be like like there I am, there I'm not, there I am, there I'm not, there I am, whoop, there it goes. I figured it would be very quick, but I didn't really see any indication of me anywhere. That doesn't mean I wasn't in that shot, but I didn't have very high hopes. I thought maybe just because like shot, I was kind of opportunistic about it. Like wherever I could, I would try to, weasel myself into behind the main character
like
Right.
just to increase
I
the
was
odds.
spending a lot of time right behind the assistant director looking at the frames.
Yeah.
I was looking at like, okay, what are the shots they're taking? What are they doing? How it's going to look like in the camera? And I was looking into more of a. I mean, I couldn't say that on the set. I was looking more into technicalities of what kind of lights, cameras, lenses, what are they using for such shot? Because the time when the movie is going to finalize, I'm going to see the results of these cameras or these lenses on the screen and see how it has really developed. I was looking into so many of these things. Then I also wanted to see the whole big green screen they created outdoors, where they wanted, even that scene is not there where they actually created the whole big. So there are a lot they've cut down. For me, the best experience that I would always remember is that being a part of that planet where we were on at that day, where all these aliens and the Starfleet and all of us were together, and it just looked so real to us. It felt like, okay, because I was a bounty hunter from another planet, yeah. So me, I'm visiting that place wherever, Yorktown or whatever it was, and then all these other aliens were visiting, and the Starfleet people were there, and we were all in this one big hall having food together, and every person from their own costume was sitting on their own table. And that's what made it really, really interesting and memorable to see that this is how the future is going to be. One day we'll be sitting in a big food hall or a big food whatever area, and then we would see different tables with different species sitting in on different table eating different kind of stuff, probably,
Despite our progress, we are still segregated.
Yeah.
Let's move into more of the finished film itself. So, Shah, you were saying you weren't as impressed with it as maybe you were hoping to be?
Yeah, I mean, wow,
So help me understand that, because okay, I'll give you my quick 2 cents, and then we'll go from there.
I want to hear more of you guys, because I was looking at it a very different way. I think,
okay,
because I was in the movie and I was looking at those buildings and I was like, oh, this building is there, and this is where I saw that building, and I want to hear you guys.
So I'll start off by saying I'm glad I did not see it in 3D, because I thought that the twisty camera angles in non-3D were already kind of, messing with my head a little bit. They were awesome. I thought it was really cool, but that was one aspect where I said, ooh, glad I didn't see that in 3D. That's a very much aside. Here's the thing. There's a saying in Star Trek fandom that only the even ones were good. Meaning that in the original Star Trek film, 2, 4, and 6 were better than 1, 3, and 5. And I would say that in the old Star Trek film world, that's very much true. I enjoyed the even numbers better. I am starting to feel like in this new reboot of Star Trek that only the odd ones are going to be good, because I loved 1. I thought it was an awesome reboot. 2 was a hash out and a replay. It's as if they took a bunch of scripts from old television, played opposite day, loaded them in a cannon, shot them out, picked them up at random, and said, here's a good script. 3, I think it really showed that they were doing something different. There was still a little bit of a throwback to, Leonard Nimoy, kind of the old cast. I like how they incorporated the photo of the old cast into the movie, but as far as the story itself, and I think Simon Pegg played a role in creating this new adaptation. I thought story-wise it was good. It was a good departure from same old, and trying to throw back to the 60s shows or, the previous movies too much. I thought it stayed in its own realm of storytelling in this alternate Star Trek universe that has now been created, that is no longer throwing back as much to the old. Matt, what do you think?
Well, it's funny because, I remember growing up and watching kind of the original movies. I think the one that I remember most, and maybe it's because, as we've previously discussed, I lived in the Bay Area, so whichever one it was when they have to rescue the alien, or the alien, when they have to rescue the whale.
Yes, that was 4.
And I still remember Chekhov, where are the nuclear vessels?
Yes.
Like when they're trying to find the reactor at Alameda or wherever they were going, So I still remember those, and I think as you and I previously discussed, I was never like a huge Star Trek geek, but I remember mostly growing up on The Next Generation. And aside from my mentioned run-in with Patrick Stewart, I actually saw the gentleman who plays Riker once at the Burbank airport and was on a tram at the airport in Las Vegas right next to, I think the actor's name was Bob Giordano. I forget which character he played. So I've had various run-ins with the Next Generation cast over the years. But so from the movie standpoint, I remember seeing 1 of the reboot. I don't think I saw 2. And I didn't have a lot of emotional investment in it completely, like I would as we might wind up talking about, like Batman versus Superman and the character. But I clearly have a knowledge of them and an experience with them. For me, I thought initially it started a little bit flat. It felt like the one thing I remember thinking in my head was the shots of the interior of the Enterprise looked too perfect, and maybe I'm coming from my Zack Snyder wanting to make things realistic kind of mindset, but they were too perfect. It looked like all it was like lucite that lit up, and they were just tapping lucite that had no interactivity, and so it threw me out of it. It was actually hard for me to get into it and kind of suspend my disbelief, because the interior of the set of the Enterprise was too sterile looking to me. It was too perfect, and not even in a functional futuristic way. So it took me a little bit to get into it, and then I kind of got more into the story, but I never felt fully vested in it. But I ultimately, I thought I enjoyed it. By the time that it got to the end, I thought it sort of intermixed a lot of old and new, and I didn't get all these super nuanced references, although later I came to sort of understand them looking around on the internet and trying to get an understanding for how it was received overall.
Well, it's interesting. Here's one thing that, as you say that, I think about. So you were talking about kind of like the lucite, and it seemed a little kind of dated. So This is the alternate timeline, though. So this is the 1960s series Star Trek, right? That timeline, but the alternate, right? So this is a different Kirk. So in actuality, it is older than Next Generation and Voyager and that whole timeline. This is way before that. So I don't know. Maybe that's what they were trying to go for. But to your point, it took you out of it.
Yeah, it was harder for me to get into it because, just from as I recall having watched The Next Generation, it felt more like a feasible, real environment. Like when they were on the bridge, it had futuristic looking kind of a sensibility to it, but it was still realistic. Like, there was like a leather chair or whatever. Like, it just looked like an actual room versus like a set. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have those Palm Pilot tricorders.
Yeah, and I remember seeing some things like that, like on the set. There was actually one scene in that Yorktown kind of like establishing shots where somebody goes into a teleporter and, gets teleported. And I remember they had a couple of those booths basically just kind of in the hall. And it basically, that's all it was. It was like basically illuminated lucite with like, what a little, sort of intricate circuitry appearing, within the lucite. But that's what the ship looked like too, So it made sense from the standpoint of I had seen that look elsewhere, at least in my experience with the film. But it took me a little bit to get into it. What I actually liked more was the ship that they discovered on the planet that they were on. That actually felt more like a ship to me. Do you know what I mean? Because it wasn't so plasticky, perfect looking. So in some respects, by the time they got to that point, it felt I was able to sort of go with it a little bit more, I think, because it felt more real looking to me.
Yeah, I liked the old ship as well. I like the new kind of character that they introduced. Why am I forgetting? Jayla?
Jayla, I think her name was, yeah.
So, and it was interesting because I remember reading a article recently or listening to an interview recently from J.J. Abrams, and they were talking about Anton Yelchin, who unfortunately passed away. And they were asking him, they said, are you going to recast for Chekhov? And he basically said, no, we're not going to recast. He can't be replaced. He's kind of a one of a kind. And then as I saw the movie and I saw how they've written in this new character who's now going into Starfleet, I'm like, that's where number 4 is going to go. It's going to go with her taking that seat. At least that's my early prediction.
That's a good theory, actually. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, actually, I could see that happening because at least they've already introduced her.
Yeah.
There's some familiarity, and she definitely has that sort of,
remember, she's
knowledge of the functionality and whatnot of the ship. And
she's a yellow shirt, right? So she's going the engineering side because she was putting stuff together. Or is yellow engineering, anyways? But yeah, I mean, I think she can definitely fill into that role of being, kind of assistant at the helm.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, for me, I just feel after looking at Star Trek and being on a set and everything, it was like it's a movie the studio didn't want to make, but because they signed it up, so they just made it anyways, and then they released it because halfway the director was changed, the new director was brought in, Justin Lin, and all that happened. So it's like this movie had a lot of reshoots, and this movie had a lot of backstories going on, and it shows on the screen. Actually, it shows there is no consistency of the story in the movie, and even this alien and whoever the aliens were or the main character, the makeup is not that elaborated. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much like somebody turned their face white and put some black lines on it, things like
Now I know it was probably not easy to tell, but did you realize that the actress who plays Jada, Sophia Botella, that she was also, and this is another one of my favorite movies. This is the one that I can definitely watch from wherever I tune in. Kingsman, Secret Service.
Yeah.
She was Gazelle in Kingsman.
Yeah, and I think she was one of the strongest character in Kingsman.
Yes.
She made it look so good, like one of the best henchmen, probably.
Yes.
In these kind of villain thing. I mean, amazing. I mean, she's so hot, and with the legs, she had no legs, and she made it look so hot.
Yeah, she did excellent.
She did great. She did great. But what I'm thinking is this whole. I couldn't go in the movie. Usually what happens is that when I'm watching a movie, I just go into it and it just captures me. This movie was never capturing me. It was always something that was taking me out of the movie.
Well, now I wonder if it's because you saw too much behind the scene. Do you think that might have influenced your ability to kind of see it with fresh eyes as opposed to kind of already?
Actually, no, because the set we were on are hardly 2 or 3 scenes really. Rest of the whole movie is not from that set. So I was trying to follow the story, and the story was not really taking me in. It's just like from here to there, or probably it was just too cliche. The story was just too ordinary. It was just, hey, you know what, something like that's going to happen. It's just obvious thing, very predictable. One of the things people really get engaged in the movie is that maybe they cannot predict the next scene or the next thing, what's going to happen next. This movie was very predictable. Obviously, the ship has crashed somewhere. They're going to get the ship out. They're going to go out and they're going to kill the guy, and that's what's going to happen. The only unpredictable thing in the whole movie was Idris Elba being the villain. So I was like, okay, well, boo-hoo, big thing, and really bad makeup too. Just I don't know. I was a bit disappointed with this movie. I didn't expect it to be this way, really.
Well, I will have to say. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
I was gonna say it's funny that listening to Shah, like he and I basically had the same feeling where we felt kind of a little bit outside of it, and I think my expectation was going to be the opposite. Like I kind of thought that I would have had more of a inside edge to it. I don't know, like even though we were only, in that one scene, having been on the set and having had that unique experience of really, I mean, there were moments, and maybe it was as the night wore on and I got more sleep deprived and more delirious. I started imagining that I was on this, space station, and I was like, I kind of pictured myself in that character being real, but the minute I don't know, there was something about actually seeing the movie, it totally inverted that. And it was odd because I almost thought it would have resurrected that feeling from having been a part of the production, even though the scene itself was minute. It was like maybe 5 minutes total between the two scenes that they showed. Just having been involved in the process and meeting so many great people. And I actually had an opportunity. I met and shook hands with Simon Pegg. When his scenes finished, I kind of made an effort to meet him, and I had just seen another one of his movies. I think it was called Man Up. So I commented to him that I enjoyed that. So I had got to meet him.
We met almost all the stars, right?
Yeah,
Chris Pine was there, Zachariah was there, Simon Pegg was there, Justin Lin, the director himself, Zoe Saldana. All of them were there, really.
Yeah.
Even Chekhov, what's his name, the guy who died.
Yes, Anton.
Yeah. I'm just bad with names, guys. So just bear with me on that.
Right, that's quite all right. Don't worry.
Yeah. So he was there. So I mean, Sulo, everybody was there. We almost like, okay, we were just right next to each other, right? The whole
Yeah.
time, the whole time. I mean, I'm talking about 18 hours. These guys work really hard. But this whole idea of like, I'm just looking at the numbers right now. The budget of the movie was 185 million, and it has hardly crossed 110 million. So that itself tells you that this movie is not really doing that great because it just, it didn't capture the audience in a right way. It just very, very vague. The movie was vague.
Well, I can appreciate that as as an opinion about the movie, and I think that's kind of the great thing about art, right? Is that it's always going to strike people differently. I would say that I loved it. I didn't love it as much as the first one J.J. Abrams did, but it is of the three that have come out so far. It's definitely my number two, and yeah, man, I enjoyed it. I thought it was cool. I think I'm looking forward to more. I like Star Trek. I'm hoping that I hear they're coming out with another series, television series. I hope it sticks around for a while. I can totally. I think what Paramount owns it currently. It seems that Comcast, Universal is going to bat with Disney pretty hard. It would be interesting to see if somehow this franchise ended up under the control of that Comcast Universal realm to see where they would take it. Although I doubt Paramount is going to let it go anytime soon. But thank you both, everybody. Thanks for checking out the
So much for having us again.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
it's a
thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for tuning in to the Satisfactionist Podcast, and we look forward to you coming back once again for another episode. Class dismissed.